Have you ever wondered how a streamer like Netflix or Amazon chooses which films or TV series to greenlight, to develop and produce? Have you ever wondered how they pick up a finished film and distribute it on their platforms? Did you even know that streamers have two very distinct business models? That studio development production business model and also that acquisition distribution business model. Today, in this deep dive movie revolution conversation, I speak with Doro, a development producer who used to work for Netflix and Amazon. We dive into all the things that have to do with streaming and acquisitions. Now, some of these things have changed, and these streaming services and business models constantly go through shifts because they're trying to adjust what works best for them. So some things that she speaks about today may not be relevant, a year from now. So these are her own opinions, but these are some great insights for indie producers and writers and filmmakers trying to understand that streaming service business model. So please stick around and enjoy this conversation.
One of the things I think is probably the the thing you come across the most is filmmakers wanting to get their shows right on a streaming platform, and I'm sure so many of them don't really understand the difference between what streamers do, the kind of like the acquisitions to commissioning side. So I kind of want to just dive into that first question that I imagine you get a lot, and it's actually a question I'm so curious about. So how do streamers just go about acquiring a film to begin with? What do they do? What do they want to get your film? And is it something you do, or is it something they go out to do? So in that position you've been in, so how do streamers decide which films to acquire?
Okay, great. I love that we start with a very easy question. And yeah, hi everyone. I know we don't do the intro, but I just wanted to say hi, and I'm so happy to be here, Tyler, and very grateful that you asked me to share my brain. I also, before we dive in, just want to say that obviously everything we discuss is my personal opinion and not any opinion of the streamers. And then throughout the conversation, I love data and insight. So I'm going to share a bunch of show notes with you and links to actual kind of publicly available data. So, whomever is watching can read more about that. I think there are no short answer to your question. So what I would love to do maybe is if we can start just understanding the streaming business a little bit before we answer immediately that question. So I know you're going to have someone else talking about the theatrical business, right? And in a bit more detail. I always have the feeling that theatrical business is really in the public eye because box office reports are reported on a weekly basis, and people just kind of more familiar with the theatrical business where, you have the model that you want butts on the seats in the preview week, opening weekend, and the week after. And that's how cinemas program. And then, box office reports are reported and everyone can go on box office module or numbers and then see the data. When we talk about streaming and streaming business, I think the goal is slightly different, and it's really useful to understand the streaming business as a whole. So when we talk about streaming, we talk about the SVOD subscription VOD players. So everything that is Netflix, Paramount Plus, Disney Plus, Amazon Prime Video. And the model is that we call it SVOD, which is all about subscription. So you pay a flat fee every month, and then you get access to all the content. And that kind of signals what's important to them. So every streamer has two main goals. They want to keep people happy who are already their audience. It's called retaining that membership base. Of course, if I pay $10 every month, I want to get access to amazing library. I want to get access to new shows. I want to watch what I'm interested in. And then the other category is acquiring new subscribers, right? So who are the people who we don't have access to but are willing to pay that $10 every month, and how we can cater for them and their taste. What's missing right now? Is it the access? Is it that they don't know that what we have? Do we have to commission new shows? And so on. So these are kind of the two big pillars: keeping people happy who we have, reaching out to new people. And that's kind of a push-pull business goal. So every streamer in-house, when we talk about big budgets, we hear in the news, right? In 2025, the data says that Netflix is going to spend $18 billion on content. That's mind-blowing, right? That's 11% more than they did last year. Same numbers, Amazon 9.1 billion, Paramount 15.2 billion, Disney 23 billion for 2025. So that's an insane number of money. So how they allocate it is they look at every country with a different lens. So, maybe my membership in the UK will look very different to the membership in the US, and it looks very different to the membership in Korea. And every streamer has those who are the audience we have, who are the audience we want to reach, right? And so it's also important to say that Netflix has like 300 million subscribers, right? That means like 300 million of us right now paying that $10 or so every month to get access to the service. I can't imagine how many other people who are not subscribing right now at Netflix. The pool is kind of smaller. If you look at Paramount Plus, they only have 71 million subscribers, right? So when Cindy Holland, who is now Paramount Plus creative lead, says, I want to entertain the whole world, she literally means I want to entertain the 71 million people I have, but also I know that if Netflix has 300 million, then surely there is the 230 million people that right now I don't have. So what do they want to watch, and how can I, engage them, I guess. So I hope that makes sense in terms of like, that's the business priority, and the way why I kind of explain it, because it really reflects how internally teams are organized, and how, Netflix is not like one office where there is like a phone and you can ring and talk to the person, although there is a really cool South Park meme about that. So they organize between these goals, acquisition and retention. And every country has their different tactics. So I hear a lot about maybe, series are there to keep people on the platform, and they use films to plug in the catalog and reach those new audiences. I don't necessarily think that's true in every country, because again, in some countries, they don't do series, right? If you look at countries where you can get access to Netflix, but they don't do original content, they acquire a lot of films, more films in the catalog than they do with series, right? Because they know that those series travel to other countries. So I hope that kind of like brings a bit of a light into how these business models are structured. And then if we follow the same logic, then we can say, okay, when we look at each streaming business as an organization, then I feel we can talk about 3 different ways how we work with them. And this is, if you take one thing away from this conversation, like this should be it. And I organize all my thoughts and answers and kind of case studies I brought here based on this kind of 3 different ways of working. Let's talk about the 3 ways how streamers work with people, filmmakers.
Exactly. I think that's 100%. I think that's so. I'm sure that's the part that is the most confusing for a lot of people is how streamers actually work with them, and I'm sure you'll touch on this too. Kind of the difference between commissioning a project and acquiring a project, because I know that so many people think of a streamer as just this one central concept. And it's almost like I see it more of like a commissioner is, someone who's coming in obviously you'll explain it, but right, better than I will. Someone who's coming like a studio, and you're going to pitch to them, and then they're going to give you the money to make it. And then there's also on the other side, they're almost like a distributor where they come in, like back in the, the early 2000s, where someone would go around, who'd go around to festivals, and there'd be someone who does like sales acquisition. They would go and buy a film so they could distribute it. And I think those are 2 sides of the streaming. And I don't think a lot of people understand that they're probably 2 very different sides, 2 completely different teams, and money is allocated completely different. So like when you're talking about that 15 billion, it's not just like, well, here's 15 billion to make all these shows and movies. So I'd love to kind of to dive into that. And then I guess along those ways, like how they come in as co-financiers and producers, and and how they kind of figure out that acquisition process. So really just so filmmakers understand like how this process works and what streamers are really doing there behind the scenes.
Yes, exactly. So it's not that Dan Lin has like 18 billion in his pocket going around and commissioning Netflix films, unfortunately. So in my mind and in the organization setup, there are three ways you can work with a streamer. And then we also should talk about who you are. Are you a writer? Are you a director? Are you a producer? The first bucket, I call it the original production or commissioning, right? And this is very different, to your point, to the second bucket, which is acquisition and licensing. And then the third model, which is co-productions. So let's talk first about the originals of commissioning, right? When I use the word original, that's kind of how, if you switch on Netflix, if you switch on Amazon, you can see the little logo, you can see it's a Netflix original, which can be very misleading. And we can talk about that as well in the acquisition bucket. But generally speaking, the original commissioning is the classic studio model. So they identify the writers and directors they want to work with. They look for IP, and IP can be anything. Intellectual property can be books, video games, board games, anything that has a kind of value for an audience. And they go out and say, hey, I'm really interested to work with you. We're looking for crime, drama, targeting older male. Do you have something? And then probably they will have something, because that's, those creators are really famous probably for the crime and the drama. Those teams in the creative team, in the commissioning team, these are small teams organized in the key countries for each streamer. And like key countries, I mean, where strategically they are present. They have production hubs. So for Netflix, that's US, UK, France, Spain, so on. Probably the same for Disney Plus, Apple, probably less so for Paramount, who are just starting out in the US, maybe in the UK. And those commissioning teams are small. They are probably 1, 2, 3 executives per pod. And by pod, I mean there is one team for a film, one team for a series. In 2024, when Dan Lin took over the Netflix original film team in the US, the Variety reported how he reorganized his team, and he reorganized it by genre, right? So in the US, there is the added complexity that there are people who look after, team one looks after action, thriller, horror. Team two looks after young adults and romance and comedy. Team three looks after religious content, holiday content, and whatever. So the added complexity is that you also have to know that who are the people in each team, what they're looking for. In smaller countries like the UK, France, Germany, that may be easier because there's one team. So producers, sales agents have a really good relationship with them. In this original commissioning team, it's completely different to the acquisition based on the timeline, the relationship, how they build that, the development they invest into those productions. So usually the way how it works is, obviously these streamers have immediate data and immediate access to insights through their algorithm and through the amazing product, right? So that's really helpful to understand that who is my audience in this exact country, and what was the other audience I don't have right now, but in 2-year time, I need to grow that way. So these internal conversations happen between the research team, insights team, creative executives, and they come up with a strategy. Usually that's a 2-3 year strategy, right? Because that's the life cycle of actually making things from scratch. And then they go out to their production companies, to their trusted production companies, right? And there is no secret list that exists that only 10 production companies in the entire world gets to meet them. But it's a fair assessment to say that every country has their big production companies who that have that existing relationship, right? So those creative executives engage those production companies and say, hey, in the next 1, 2, 3 years, I'm looking for this specific genre for this specific audience. We would love to have more action. We right now don't need period drama because it's too expensive, right? So it's like super high level briefs that actually is high level enough, but it's kind of like it's leaving the creative room for the production companies to actually go out and explore what scripts are out there, what projects are out there that would fit the brief, which is not too restrictive, right? So they're not going to tell you that I need one action hero who is a woman who is exactly 32-year-old and really good with bombs, right? They're going to tell you the genre. They're going to tell you kind of, again, think through the audience lens. I want content that is really appealing for this type of people. And I use the word content, and probably some of your audience would be like, oh my God, we talk about film and TV. So that's a very kind of studio language. So I do apologize for that. So in this group, once the content executives have this brief, they talk to those production companies. And it's important to say that those are kind of the trusted partners in this conversation, right? And of course, if you are Sean Baker, if you are Martin Scorsese, if you are Michael Bay, you're not watching this video, and that doesn't apply to you, right? Because you can pick up the phone and call Ted Sarandos or Cindy Holland and sell your ideas to them, right? So we're talking about the rest of us who work with those production companies. And almost like I would love if all of us look at these production companies as the research and development department of the studios, right? So while the studio team is quite small, they work with larger production companies who have a robust development department, robust executive producers, and it's almost like an extension of a creative partnership. And it's necessary in this process because if you think about it, Tyler, everyone has 24 hours a day, right? They're not gonna sit there and read hundreds of scripts themselves. They need to rely on production companies to go through really the process. And this can take time, right? So anything development is from 1 year to the development hell of being 8+ years, right? Because maybe there are issues with the underlying rights. Maybe, there is more development needed. Maybe they bring in writers, but the writers actually don't connect with the material. So they need different writers. So there is like a really long process here. So everything that fits into this original commission bucket, it takes time and sometimes leads nowhere, right? There are loads of projects which are in development for an infinite years. So that's also, we just need to acknowledge that's not a fast process, and that's not a kind of let's get it done sort of mentality. I would also say that probably the best work comes out of this bucket, because the more time and effort and eyes you have on a project, probably it matures, right? in a good way, hopefully. I also say that probably this category we hear about overall deals. So, I think Edward Berger announced his overall deal with Netflix recently. We know that Phoebe Waller-Bridge has an overall deal with Amazon. Shondaland has an overall deal with Netflix, and so on. So all of them fits into this original content or commissioning category. I hope that makes sense.
What's so important here with what we're talking about is that, and you've touched on it, is that this usually the audience that I engage with are indie filmmakers who have experience and have made something or are trying to make something, and they're sort of either they are in that first level or they're sort of trying to level up. And so many of these probably aren't at the level to just pitch directly to Netflix. Because people are like, how do I pitch? The question is always like, how do I pitch to Netflix? Right. And as you touched on here, Netflix has kind of like preferred partners. And that obviously change and goes, if you're an indie filmmaker and like a Sean Baker and you've made, 5 years ago, probably couldn't pitch to pitch to Netflix. Now, of course, he could. He went and keep doing his thing, and so those things can change, obviously, and you can create a name for yourself even just by, by making a film that then got a whole lot of attention and like, oh, that's a filmmaker we want to have on our platform. So then with that regard, I mean, should indie filmmakers focus on trying to, I mean, obviously they're not pitching to Netflix, they're not pitching to a streamer. You're going to have to go through someone. So first, in essence, you have to pitch to another production company. And then they have to say, you know what, we like what you're doing. And yeah, we want to develop that with you. Or, obviously if you're a screenwriter, you're just hoping to find a producer. But if you're maybe a producer, filmmaker, you are want to try to attach yourself to another company. So is it worth, and this is going to be a kind of arbitrary question, but is it worth trying to pitch to one of those preferred partners? Or should you say, like, you know what, I'm just going to try to make my film and then see if I can get it acquired by Netflix or wherever else, or whatever stream. We keep saying Netflix, but it's the most global brand. So that's why I refer to it so much. So is it better to try to go through that preferred partner route, which could be very, very slow, or make it yourself, which also could be very slow? As we know, both of those processes could take a while. As an indie filmmaker, someone who's got maybe like a $3 million budget, that's what they're aiming for, 3 to 5, something like that. They're aiming for here. And then maybe they know that in action, yeah, exactly. And action films do, we know that that's probably one of the most bought acquisitions, because it's, everyone loves action. Action's kind of easy to sell and market in a way, right? I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong here. Now maybe I'm making speculations that are inaccurate.
Everyone
and horror too, of course. Horror is a great, obviously, probably the easiest example
cheap to make. Yeah.
So what route should they take? I mean, should they try to pitch to that preferred partner? I'm going to keep using those, like, I don't know a better name for it. Or should they try to make it on their own and then see if they can get it acquired? And if that is the goal, how do they even go about that? How do they even go, like, how do I even get Netflix to even look at my damn film when it's done? If I can't even pitch them to begin with, I don't even know where to go when it's made. So I guess that's a lot of stuff we could dive into there. But I think that's like probably a big thing people think about.
Yeah, 100%. And I have to say that right now in my development role, I specifically work with first and second time feature filmmakers. So I am in the trenches with everyone in that. So I have a bit of experience on that, and not just kind of the really high level one. And I'm really glad that you asked that question, and you kind of also already answered it in your question, because I would say, depending on everyone's right now, where you are in the process, where you want to be in the next 1, 2, 3 years, and what is that you're actually pitching, right? And let's talk about that if you are a writer or writer-director, because I have a very different kind of advice for producers. And if you are a writer, director, producer, pick one. Don't be all three. No one can do everything. And find a partner, find a producing partner who's just a producer and really good at that, and focus on writing or writing, directing. So if you're a writer-director and you have all the time in the world, and you say, you know what, I'm excited to test this development route. I don't want to do it myself. I want to find the right partner, go down the path, right? And I'm a very pragmatic person, so I'm going to give some pragmatic advice on this call. So that can be identifying those trusted partners of the streamers that they like working with. And that is, everything is Googleable nowadays, right? So I did a little exercise before this interview, and I went to research, just using Google, I went to research all the Netflix original series that were made in the UK from 2023 to 2025. And I found all of them through just, they now started publishing their top performing things. They also do really, really nice PR announcements every year where they gather the important filmmakers and production companies they want to work with. And I went down on that route and identified 13 companies in the UK that they actively work with. interestingly, there were only 1 or 2 companies who did 2 series. Everyone else was like 1 series, 1 different production company. So that was also refreshing to see, like, okay, they don't only work with that, with Sister or CISO, right? They have like 8 more companies that they prefer. And once you have that list, obviously you have to also understand what that production company represents and what they're really good at, right? There are loads of production companies, so you can research, are they do they do TV and film, or do they only specialize in one? Do they do high-end TV, right? So they, do the big thriller action stuff, or do they maybe also pick up emerging filmmakers first and second? And then you go onto their website and find the people, right? Who are the development people? Who is the development team I need to talk to? And I think people have a kind of attraction to power in terms of like, I'm going to email the CEO and send them my script. And that's not the way to do that, right? So pick someone in the development team. That can be the development coordinator, that can be the development assistant. Coordinators and assistants in development team are super valuable, and they do such an important job of reading all the scripts that are coming in, writing coverage report, talking to their boss, really like being that voice in that ear, like, oh my God, this is an amazing material, you have to read it. They also track filmmakers in each country, right? So they go to short film festivals and watch links. And I had conversations recently at Disney with a development coordinator, and she was like, oh yeah, I watched that. I know that person. I watched all the shorts. And I was like, really? That was like, I was so shocked. So there is like that tracking going on, and maybe not necessarily so then they can call them and say like, hey, I watched that short. Do you want to, direct the next Disney Plus series? But just so it's talent development, right? Those people probably in a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year time will do their first feature and then their second feature. So that's kind of, if you have all the time in the world, go down the route of the production company and try to find those partners who you really believe in your material, right? Because they will also be your honest sounding board. They will be the people who tell you this material is really good, but if you also want to direct it, you're not at that level to do a big action piece across 3 different countries with CGI and helicopter stunts, right? Go write something else that is like more doable if you absolutely want to determine to direct it as well. So you can use those production companies as a lab, right? Work with them. That's what we do, right? Like going through the internal development process before I even take it to any studio, right? Meaning that we spend anything between 1 month, that's very short, 3 months to 9 months on just working with the script, really kind of polishing the material. We have in-house script editors to work with. We do research on rights, if there are underlying rights. We think about development casting, who are, do I have to attach someone right now because otherwise it's a first-time filmmaker? Is the budget realistic? Do we need to adjust the script? And so on. So that's a really important step before I even put the pretty pitch deck together that people spend 5 seconds reading and then send it to the studios, right? And then an important thing that we haven't talked about is that these production companies also kind of an extended brain of the studio. So they know what's sellable right now. They know what the market wants and what's realistic in 2025 right now to sell, right? And who are the partners to sell it, right? So I can have the best, which I have an idea about, the best medieval queer romantic comedy series for young adults. If I try to pitch this to Paramount Plus, who are really older male heavy, right, with series like Mobland and Yellowstone, there is the creative piece can be the best script you've ever read, the best project with attached the best talent. They will not pick it up because that's not what they're looking for. So when I mean like research and development department as a production company, it also means that they should have the market knowledge, right? Because ideally those development teams and producers They go to all the markets, they go to all the festivals, they try to sneak into the movie party in Cannes and talk to the right people. They go to conferences, they also go to, finance case studies, and they should have that knowledge already and be the best partner with you to find that creative piece that is not just market ready, sellable, but also like at the right level for you, if that makes sense.
Yeah, to really understand it, because I think you have to know what those people want. I mean, like you said, you have to do your research. It's so much better to spend the time to do the research than to waste so much time just emailing and sending. And if you know that they have no interest in what you're doing anyway at that moment, or what you're trying to put together. So it's better to you know, I mean, think of that as pre-production, like you would on a film. You're in pre-production of development, and it's like you are taking the time and the effort. You're doing your research. You're figuring out all the people that you would want to work with and send it to. And then also, I think on the same token as that, like you you want to also find someone that's going to be like your partner in essence. You want to look at it and be like, yeah, I like what they're doing. They seem like these are a company that I'd want to have my project with. And you may look at other things that are being done, like, you know what, I like those movies, this and that, but I don't really see myself fitting into their ecosystem. So I think it's so important to understand like what they're after, because like you said, they have their own projects anyway. They're already developing and things like that. So like obviously they're interested in, and just like you are interested in seeing outside projects, but you're not going to just accept all the submissions that come in. You're going to really pick what aligns with your goals at the moment and what those goals of a streamer are, and where you can take it, because it is a long-term commitment.
Exactly. And then, like if you look at like format, if you look at formats, how you do as a in a development team, in the production company, how you do coverage, there is always a section where say, do I recommend this project? And maybe the project is right now a medieval high story that no one will fund at the price point of 60 million, but maybe the writing is brilliant, and maybe that's a writer we want to work with on another project, right? And I often have those conversations where I say, okay, I just came back from Berlin. Here is all the trades magazines I printed out. I went through, these are the things that selling, and also these are the things that you as a writer are good at, because I know that you are good at writing thriller, action, so on. So is there another story that you have maybe in your desk and you haven't thought about it? So that should be a conversation. I also want to just say, Tyler, that I see the questions and I get the questions like, how do I pitch something to Netflix, Paramount, Amazon? But the question should be, how do I make my film, and how do I make it the way how I want it, with the quality I'm happy with, and with the people I care about, right? And that's a better question, because if a filmmaker comes to us, the strategy should never be, I'm going to take this to Netflix. Because how many piece of every year in the US, 50,000 scripts are registered, right? That's insane. What do we think, how many Netflix originals are going to be from that, right? Probably 2. So the number is horrendous. So the strategy should never be, I'm going to take this to one streamer. Every piece, and I brought 10 case studies we can talk through if we have time, but every piece of feature film project should be a carefully curated strategy, where if you have the time and if you have, the kind of the means to go through the development process, that should be, okay, what is like the long-term development we try? What is our finance spend? What is our the route to green light, right? Is there like, are we tapping into soft money in each country, right? I know that's quite hard in the US, but outside of the US, if you're in UK, Germany, France, there are loads of public funders, there are loads of grants, there are loads of cross pan-European grants like Creative Media, Eurimage, so on. So what is my soft money strategy? Can I get that, right? That's very important. In the UK, can I get BFI money? Can I get BBC and Film 4 money? They have extremely limited budget, so I'm not saying that that's the answer to everything, right? Altogether, the public funders in the UK have a 40 million budget. in pounds per year, very little, but still very important for first and second time filmmakers, because more often these people, these commissioners prefer the creative risk taking and talent development over the profit that they're making. So beyond soft money, what is my studio strategy? Are there any studios out there who are willing to take a risk on a first or second feature? And I have some examples we can talk through where the answer was yes, but it was never kind of I pitched it to Netflix and they gave me 5 million answer, right? What are the production strategies? What are your tax incentive in the country? Can you then raise equity through maybe post-production equity, maybe a studio equity, and so on? So can I raise pre-sale, right? So there are always different strategies where, of course, you're going to try to go for the studio pickup and the studio development if that's what you agree with your producer and the creative partner. I do work on projects right now that the filmmakers would be like, of course, I'm going to take my IP. I take the money and we're going to make something really good. And it's going to end up on Netflix and it's going to be fantastic because 300 million people have the chance to view it. While other filmmakers may say, I don't want to give up my IP. I don't want to have like that deal. I really believe in a theatrical run. I want to have a massive theatrical release. I want to see my stuff in cinemas around the world. I really care about that. So that's always a conversation as well around strategy. And you should have that with the production company as early as script development, right? Because the most annoying thing is when a writer spends 4 years on a script, real life scenario, 4 years on a script, and they get to you and they say, it's done, it's perfect, I'm ready to shoot it next year, right? And it's such a hard place to go from there when someone spent years and years alone writing something, perfecting it, maybe sharing it to the friends, right? And the friends say, yeah, that's perfect, yeah, great, sounds good. And then suddenly you're in this time crunch that you want to make something, right? Which is not impossible, but then answering to your question, then go down to route number 2, right? Which is make your film, make it scrappy, try to raise funds in a traditional kind of soft money pre-sale way. Don't waste years in trying to get into the slow kind of development route, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. Exactly. I think, and even just on that kind of topic anyway, that don't get so attached. Like, I mean, let's like screenwriters and screenwriters directors don't get so attached to just this one project. Like, this is my one passion project. Like, you should have 5 scripts, 3 scripts, 10 scripts. You should have 10 scripts, 7 that are not good, and then 3 you're like, okay, I'd like to see these go through, but I'm going to first start with pitching this one because, like you said, maybe that development producer, it was like, I'm not a big fan of this project, but I really love your writing. Do you have something else? And you've kind of had that instead of saying like this. I've spent 4 years writing this script and now I'm ready to make it. I would like, before we dive into the acquisition side of things, though, because I think we're now ready to kind of transition to it. I would love to, since you have a case study and you kind of just referenced it a little bit, I would love to just dive into one of those. And then while we're still on this kind of section of the of streamers, which is still that kind of commissioning, working with production company section, before we kind of go into the other side of the bucket, as you say, and talk acquisition. So let's dive into one of those case studies then.
I'd love to talk about, what should we talk about? I would love to talk about The Kitchen. I don't know if you watched that. It was a Netflix original film in the UK. It was 2023 when it was released. And it's a directorial debut by 2 of the filmmakers, Daniel Kaluuya and Kip Tavares. And it's an interesting story because, I want to acknowledge that obviously Daniel Kaluuya is a very famous actor. You don't have to be a very famous actor to do something interesting. But I was really fascinated by kind of how this became a Netflix original film when it's a directorial debut. In fact, 2 debut duo, right? Which is kind of, happens rarely compared to maybe the other kind of acquisition route. And the whole story started, I think, if I based on these all the interviews I read about this, the project, but it started 9 years prior, when the filmmakers made a short film, and this short film was made in partnership with Film 4. And Film 4 in the UK do support and track emerging filmmakers, right? Meaning from short to first and second and so on. Very rarely they put money in shorts, so that's also kind of the honest truth, but they do watch shorts and they do say to you, like, I love your writing. If you want to also be a director, go make some shorts. I need to see your, you know, like proof of concept, your directorial taste. So that happened, and they made a short together and used that short as almost like a taster take to the idea, and developed it with Film 4. So Film 4 was part of the script development early on. They also got a producing credit and a production company credit on the film, which is interesting, right? You would think maybe that's a co-production. However, it's not a co-production. It just means that Film 4 probably, assumably, put money into the script writing, which is really good. The writers got paid during this long development process. Maybe they also paid for a script editor, so they got like structured development feedback. But if you watch The Kitchen, you know that this is a sci-fi set in London. It's a very futuristic kind of big CGI kind of second unit film. Film 4 every year annually has about 13 million for every single film they support, right? So probably that's not going to come out from their production budget. I assume what happened is that was a perfect time when Fiona Lumpty started as head of UK film at Netflix. And as every creative executive ever, when you join a company, you bring your own vision, you bring your own taste, paired with the metrics we talked about before, right? So it was actually commissioned by Fiona. And I think it was her kind of kudos to her that she was taking that creative risk, and really believing in two filmmakers who haven't done a feature yet, right? The film was branded as a Netflix original, and it was released worldwide, right? Because it was a Netflix original, right? So not just like an acquisition piece where you put like the Netflix logo on the poster, if that makes sense. So yeah, I think that's kind of the 1% that gets through the actual commissioning and Netflix original route. I can, you know, say the same with Disney and Amazon, but every other case study I looked at for this conversation are kind of going through the second bucket, which is some sort of license deal, some sort of acquisition. And it's never just finding a script, loving that script, and giving X million to a debut director to make something that they want to make, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's probably what most, I mean, I would say, I don't know, it's like I've taken a survey, but now maybe I should. But I imagine that's the way most filmmakers, and then that's kind of like that earlier stage think about it, is that is that Netflix is going to support my film from the beginning, early on. And then, so now I want to talk about that other bucket then. And two parts of it, the acquisitions bucket, because also I think another thing is like, well, Netflix is gonna buy my finished film, and kind of what that even means. Because I mean, obviously they're not just saying, okay, well, here's a check for your whole film. Sometimes it could be licensing, and I imagine the licensing is something that the production company is preferring, as opposed to, let's say, Netflix. But maybe that's now with your with the way you're looking, because I don't know. I mean, because my assumption, because now I want to say it, so that way, maybe I'm wrong, which would be great. My assumption is that a streamer would just prefer to buy something outright, because now they have, they own it in perpetuity. But maybe it is, and maybe they also do prefer just to license something. So now because
Yeah, I think it's
I would
complicated.
assume that from their end that they would be more interested in just buying something perpetuity, they own it forever, right? But maybe that's wrong. So now I'm really curious. So what is so I guess we don't even have to first let's just talk about that. Instead of diving like how do you get Netflix to buy or whatever streamer to buy a finished film, first let's just talk a little bit about that. Like what is even a streamer doing anyway there? Are they buying something? Are they licensing it? And how do they see those two things? Just
Yeah,
so we have an understanding of what this even means.
yeah, I think so. In that second bucket, which is the licensing slash acquisition, we have to understand a little bit all the different rights, right, that an intellectual property can have. So I often break it down to every film, strictly speaking about film, every film has theatrical, non-theatrical, VOD. Within VOD, there is SVOD, which is subscription of VOD, TVOD, which is transaction of VOD. So you go on Amazon and buy that one film for the night. There is PVOD, which is a premium VOD that I can watch something that is currently in cinemas with a higher price point. There is AVOD, which is I can watch something for free, but I have to suffer through 3 blocks of 10-minute advertising. There is or used to be home entertainment rights. There is shrinking and shrinking. So I can buy something on DVD. And then non-theatrical rights we talked about, so any kind of pop-up screening, eventized screening, and then there are separate rights for airlines, interestingly. So that's kind of like how you can sell all rights. And probably here we need to talk about the importance of sales companies and the role of sales companies in that, right? Because it's very rare that if I'm a production company, I can finance something myself from pocket, finish it, and then try to sell the rights. Nor I have the connections or the time. That's a very complicated process, right? So then I go to my trusted sales companies. And the same way how there are trusted production companies, there are also the trusted sales companies. There aren't many, so you can research them again. Usually these are outside of the US, right? Because US buys for domestic rights, meaning they are distributors. Neon, for example, perfect example, right? They come on board, they're like, I take US rights, great. You have your films financed, right? Because it's so massive, it's such a big territory, such an important territory that if you manage to sell the US to a distributor, you're good. So usually these sales companies, international sales companies, it's international from a US point of view, right? So let's always ask international to whom. They are international from a US point of view. Often they are based in the UK or in France or in Germany. And then, of course, in LATAM and in APAC regions as well. And then they have like regional specialties, right? So one sales company is really good at selling horror and thriller on the 5 million price point in terms of production budget. Maybe other sales companies are specialized in festival darlings and they're interested in like, oh, is this film going to go into Sundance and Cannes and Berlin, right? Others may be specialized in high-end drama with famous casts. So they all have like preferences and kind of like a brand on the market that what they like to represent. So again, you can do your research, but as a production company, your producer should do the research and should have that relationship anyway with them. And there are the kind of etiquette or ways of engaging with a production company. Usually it's called during the packaging phase, right? So let's say the development is done within a production company. So we go through the same kind of route as in the bucket number 1, original content within the production company, but probably faster. So there is like, work on the script, there is development casting going on, maybe with the casting director, there is budgets put together, finance plan, maybe soft money is raised, maybe funding applications are submitted and so on. And we try to close finance on something. And so your finance plan usually have a line saying pre-sale / sales MG, which is a minimum guarantee from a sales company. And that can be anything from 0% to 40%, depending on the actual film. You can read really frightening statistics that pre-sale market is dead and really hard to sell. And I brought some examples that kind of quite the opposite, which is good news. But yes,
it is good news. Yes,
it is tough. It is tough to sell everything, and I think packaging is this mystery that lots of producers are doing, where they try to find the right cast at the right price point, so the sales company gets really excited, so they know that I can sell that to a distributor, to a streamer, and so on. So again, you need to have these sales companies, not because you can't sell legally or physically to the streamers, because they have the acquisition people, sit in the same office as the creative executives or commissioners, just in a different team. You need the sales companies because the work is mysterious. It is a really, really complicated process. And if you meet a sales agent, they will show you this Excel of like endless territories and rights, and every country in the world has different buyers, and they go to markets like AFM, EFM, Marché de Film, MIP, all of that. They have their booths. They sit there. They convince distributors that this is a good project before even anything exists at that point, right? So hopefully they do pre-sale for you, and that's some ways of closing finance on projects. And down the line, you can celebrate it with, oh, my film ended up on Disney Plus or Netflix. Some examples, again, from debut or second features is Rye Lane is a good example. I don't know if you watched that. It's a British debut film from Rain Allen Miller. It was developed with the BFI under Discovery Fund, which is a fund supporting film under 3.6 million. It was the UK rights were sold to BBC. Again, this is all finance packaging, so before the film was shot. So you had soft money from the BFI, you had soft money from the BBC picking up the UK broadcast rights. And then they had a deal with Searchlight picking up UK theatrical rights. And then part of that deal, because Searchlight is part of the Disney family, your first pay window went to Disney Plus / Hulu in the States. So if I'm a ordinary fan of Disney right now, switch it on and see, oh, Rye Lane is on Disney Plus in the UK and on Hulu in the US, I might think, that's amazing. It's a debut film. How great that they picked that up. But the route to get there was quite complicated, and it was brokered through the producers working together with the broadcaster, working together with Searchlight, and probably there was also a sales company in the mix somewhere. So that's kind of one way of getting your film, if it's a debut film, onto a streaming platform, right? There is another film right now on the market called Rapture, The Rapture. It's a horror film. It's a debut filmmaker, and the sales company is Henway Films. They took the film, I think, this year to Berlin, I think it was Berlin. And thanks to the cast who was attached, which is Kit Connor and Kit Connor, they sold the US rights to Shudder Films, the Canadian theatrical rights to Elevation, and the UK theatrical rights to True Brit. And that's how they closed finance on that. Probably what I'm assuming in that finance plan, you also have, I don't think there is soft money because it's a US project, but so you have your pre-sales from these companies. You then have your tax credit incentive. I think it's going to shoot in Hungary, which offers really nice tax incentive in the country, and also offers an extra tax incentive on spent outside of the country. So that's a good location to have. And then probably maybe they spend some equity in it, right? Maybe they have a post deal with someone, maybe the sales company put a little more minimum guarantee in the mix. So that's how you can kind of close finance. And that was really interesting to hear that was also a debut filmmaker raising that pre-sale, right? And that was this year.
First, that last part is amazing. I mean, that's what I like. I mean, there's so much there that's fantastic because you're also talking about the financing and how that's being pieced together. And I think that's important too, because so much of, especially on this side of it, if it's not just, I'm going to pitch to a studio that's going to pitch it into Netflix and they're just going to pay for it. Like when you're on this sort of, now you're on this acquisition side and you're getting sales agents in and things like that. I mean, it's all, that's the financing is part of that conversation instantly. And it's not just, I want to find a sales agent who's going to then take my film and help me get it released. They're looking at all kinds of material. They're looking, again, just like a production company is looking for that filmmaker to work with, a sales company, if they're going to put that much time and effort into it, they want to find a film that they feel like, yeah, okay, I can see us taking this through and it doing what we wanted what to do with it.
Realistically speaking, they may tell you we will never be able to raise pre-sales on it because you don't have that cost, but we love the project, right? And we love the sentiment of the project, and it feels small and intimate, but important. And so if you can find soft money, if you can't find equity and you do it that way, we can take it back to, when the film is finished or you have a rough cut, then take it back to the market. Then they're going to send out the online screeners, right? Then they try to raise more money probably for post to finish it. Sales companies are also the one who take on the effort to submit it to film festivals, right? Which is a really, really important element to it. And if you think about Sundance saw 1,500, more than that, 15,000 was the number, crazy number, submission.
Like
right?
15,000, yeah.
15,000. And how many film got in? 20?
150 total. That's from like short films, documentary to feature films. So we're talking about the whole gamut of.
Exactly. So how many just
it's 1%. And features, who knows? I don't know. But if only 1% of everything, I mean, I imagine it's 0.25% or something.
Exactly. And then if you look at the numbers, then okay, my film is in Sundance, great. I won live, right? Because there's going to be Amazon paying 10 million for the rights. And think again, because, out of those deals, I think Toronto saw 2 deals closed or announced right at the festival, which is really, really low number compared to how many films are there. However, if you ask a sales company, they're going to tell you that the reason why is in kind of in the glamorous days of streamer acquisition, you had those bidding wars, right? Especially before COVID, where you went to a market and you saw all these like sales agents really stressed out, had like 20 meetings a day, they're drinking loads of coffee, and at the end of the day, they close millions in deals, and then you get the trades and they announce it the next day and everyone's like, oh my god, there was a bidding war. And those amazing press people like stay up until 4 a.m. writing the release and there is this artificial buzz that everyone generates. And I think after COVID, when everything went online, one big thing was that now all year around, one thing is all year around, you're sending out links and you're like, you don't have to physically invite people to a fancy screening room in Soho to do an intimate, distributor screening with the filmmaker Q&A. You just send out a boring link and everyone watches it and then hope for the best, right? So that kind of habit changed a little bit. But I also feel like because you have to have pre-sale or you have to have a sales MG in your finance plan, probably those conversations started way early, right? Before you even finish your film. So by the time you got there, like finally it took 4 years to raise the finance and blood and sweat, tears went into this. Hopefully you have a robust list of people that you follow up with, and those are distributors, those are the acquisition people in the studios and so on. So you kind of like capitalize on that. Loads of work and effort and buzz went to it, instead of doing the fancy announcements at festivals and do the pickup, right? But I do have an example I looked at, which I love, and I don't know how this can be replicated, but I wanted to share. So I don't know if you watched that film on Amazon called My Old Ass. It's a fantastic film. I highly recommend. It's Megan Parker's second feature, and it debuted in Sundance in 2024. Brilliant film, really funny. Audrey Plaza plays the supporting role. There is a young YA cast playing the main role. And the film got into Sundance in 2024, and it was really buzzy because Amazon acquired it at Sundance at the price point of a 15 million acquisition, as was reported in Variety. And they picked up the US rights and the US theatrical rights, sorry, and they picked up worldwide distribution rights. And then on the back of it, Warner came in and picked up Australia, New Zealand, and Canada for theatrical only. And the reason it's so glamorous, and I don't know how this can be like replicated, right? Because basically what happens is a second-year filmmaker, who, by the way, also a fantastic actor, right, gets into Sundance, then Amazon watches it, then Warner picks it up for theatrical. They did a limited theatrical, so it's eligible for awards. We can talk about that later. And then it's available worldwide, right? It's such a magical story. But then if I tell you that, okay, it was a second feature, but actually the production company was Lucky Chap, which is Margot Robbie's production company. And Margot Robbie was the hands-on producer going on set for this production, then of course, you see the bigger picture that probably is the power of the production company who really believed in a project, who, supported this filmmaker, who moved, who was big enough to attract Audrey Plaza to be attached to the role, who was big enough to call Amazon and say, you must come down to the screening, you must watch that. Probably they had many conversations before that acquisition actually happened. Sometimes they have the deal done and then they announce it at Sundance because it sounds better. So you have to take it with a pinch of salt, but it can happen, and there are kind of blueprints how to do that. And then when I looked at what Megan Park directed before, her first film was The Fallout, and just based on my research, it probably had a similar kind of smaller budget. She did loads of shorts before. She did loads of music videos before. So she didn't just wake up one day and said, I want to be a director in addition to my acting career. Like, she put loads of work in it, right? And The Fallout was a debut again. It got into South by Southwest. Then it got acquired by HBO Max for worldwide release through their sales company, New Line Cinema. So probably what happened there is they could raise enough equity to make, it's a true indie model, right? Raise enough equity to make the film on a low price point, then have New Line Cinema supporting them, brokering the deal with Warner, who said, I think this is a perfect streamer film for us. We're not going to do theatrical release, but here is HBO Max worldwide. We can acquire all rights.
There's so many things to kind of unpack there, but we don't have to sort of dive into unpacking it. But from that whole acquisitions thing, I mean, aligning with sales agents is so important. I mean, you're not going to be like, you're not going to first knock on Netflix's door, like, hello at netflix.com email address, and be like, commission it. And on the same side, be like, hey, I made my film. Do you want to buy it now? You've got to go through people who are sort of already aligned. In essence, relationships. It's all about relationships. They've built these relationships, so you have to go through the right routes to kind of make these things happen. And so many pieces have to come together.
We didn't talk about the third bucket, which I'm just going to say one line is the co-production bucket. So there's a third way of working with a streamer. Usually it's initiated by a local broadcaster. So BBC have a deal for a BBC Film has a deal first pay window with Netflix. BBC Drama has the same deal for selected drama series like Dracula, where you watch something in the UK and you think it's a BBC original, and then you watch it in France and it comes across as Netflix original.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's like the third way of it. I have one
great
case study we didn't talk about, which kind of undermines everything that I told here. And I think it's also just really important to remember that we are in the business, so we talk business. And if you watch this 1 hour of word vomit about how to work with streamers, and you log off after this and you think, you know what, just F it, I'm just gonna make my film, and I am persevering through every hardship, please do, because there are some wonderful things come out of it. And I have one other film which we didn't talk about today, which is Sing Sing. And Sing Sing is the second feature from Greg Quedar, who is a US-based filmmaker. And he talks, I'm going to link out in the show notes, he talks on YouTube how he raised the money through blood, sweat and tear, really believed in this project. It's a small micro budget, introduced same fee for all the crew, everyone got net profit participation. There's a whole finance study on it. And through his determination that he really believed in the project, started building, the project is a building block, right? You first believe in your script, then you have your director, or maybe you are the director, then you have cast attached, and you really, your energy is, infectious, and your cast is really believing in it. And then, he took it through friends. It took, years and years and years in development, but through his connections, then introduced to friends who introduced to A24, who then acquired it. And they were like, I can't believe this is the budget. Like, let's not tell anyone how low this budget was, because what you did is amazing quality on screen, right? And then A24 picked it up, and somehow it got released by, I think Black Bear did theatrical release in the UK and in the US, and became from a low budget project that, only a handful of filmmakers believed in, something really important. And now he is on his second or third Netflix original deal as a writer and as a director. So there is that growth trajectory, but I really admire that kind of resilience that, in this industry, people will say no to you 100 times. We talked about this week, Tyler, that at a commissioning meeting, right? And they're like, how did it go? And 100 times, like, I get the no, and it's fine. I learn a lot from the no. I have a project where I'm like, I'm gonna make a rejection poster because the feedback and the quotes are so fantastic from all rejections that, it's gonna really help pitch the project, hopefully, to other people. So find your people, find your tribe who really believes in it. And ideally, within that group of people, there is one producer who has that business connection and understand, the industry, so they can advise you, and then take the advice or not, right? Like, there are so many amazing stories where the exception is really proving that, there are always people thinking out of the box and go out of the box, and sometimes, that's the best route for your project.
Exactly. I mean, I love that third part, because also too, I mean, that's the thing I see a lot, on LinkedIn or other social platforms I'm active on, and they kind of get tired of getting the no's, like, well, I guess it's just not going to happen. And other people are just like, screw it, I'm just going to do it. And even if it takes, like you said, 2 years and 3 years, and just work with friends and just try really, really hard to make something happen. And and you may have, you could be that outlier that A24 picks it up, but either, no matter what, though, if you at least made it and put it out there, it can give you the chance to do it again. And even if you have to take that same route again, just kind of like Sean Baker did for so many years, until he, got to, the epic stance he is in. But I mean, you just keep doing it. On that, the Greg film, do you two things? Do you know what the budget was for the micro budget? And two, do you know where A24 saw it to acquire? Was it at a festival, or I'm just a bit curious about that
It's
case study?
not at a festival. It's not at a festival. There is an hour-long YouTube masterclass on the financing.
Okay.
I'm gonna link that out. The budget is reported under 2 million, but everyone knows the best that, if you make a film on £10, you're not gonna tell that I made a film on £10.
Yeah, yeah.
Also, there are things like deferrals and in-kind support,
Mhm.
should calculate into it. So I'm gonna link that masterclass out. In my best knowledge, the development took 8 years in the project, and
Wow.
A24 was kind of tagging along. It wasn't in a festival release yet, although it went and became this fantastic film. I think got loads of awards and loads of award nominations.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I mean, exactly. What I like about each of these three things, I mean, it's almost like it's like a step of rejection. First, like I want to just pitch to Netflix, and like, well, that's not happening. You first got to pitch just to a production company, and they're
It,
like, no, we don't want it. I'm like, okay, well, now let's see if I can find work through sales agents.
it
Listen,
really
let's
is.
make it work.
It,
And it's
it
like
really,
everybody's saying no there, and then you finally just get down to the
yeah,
bottom of the trench, and you're like, well, screw it. I'm just gonna find my team, and we're gonna do it together and make it happen any way we possibly can.
yeah, exactly. There is a project right now where there was plan A, there was plan B, now there is plan C. I already have a plan D in my head, how we can make that. We didn't talk about casting, but I saw loads of one. I have just one thought on casting. If you can work with a casting director, try to find someone who can really unlock that talent for you, and you would be surprised that there are big names there who are willing to do first, second features. I always have really positive experience working with those casting directors just because they have this enormous knowledge that we don't in a production company. Um,
And
yeah,
those relationships, they can make those, they can reach out to, they know who to reach out to and who will most likely say yes, or who will push back, or who may be interested in looking at something even if the financing isn't 100% in place, or who's interested
exactly.
in having those kind of conversations versus who isn't. And so they bring a lot of knowledge, more than just, hey, this is who should be in your movie, but also this is who should be in it, and here's why, and here's what we can do now based on your budget, or this or that.
Yeah, it's the acquisition triangle that we didn't talk about, but basically it's you as a writer director, it's the on-screen talent, and it's the story. And let's say the story has to be excellent. Let's say that's a given. What are the other strengths? And if you are a first or second feature, you have to have another hook, depending on the genre. Maybe not for a horror, but for a drama for sure. So they can really move the needle for you.
This was amazing. I mean, I learned so much. I mean, we've talked a couple times before, and and I love these kind of conversations. And so I think this is just. I wish we could talk for 2 more hours. There's so much we could dive into, but I think this is a
Oh,
great
thank you
starting
so
point. I
much.
think just understanding sort of these aspects of it, and also just understanding that it's not just one phone call or one email or one person, or it's like if I just email this producer or just contact this person, it's like, okay, now I'm going to get my movie made. It's just
Yeah,
there's tiny building blocks, and that person may have a lot more connections, but they are also stepping on other blocks and putting things together.
exactly.
Everyone at each level is, unless they're the head of the company,
Yeah,
is
my favorite thing, and probably this is because I'm coming from a marketing background, is to see how many logos are there, in
yeah,
how many production company logos are on a poster or in front of a movie, how many
yeah,
executive producers listed, because every one of them moved the needle on one thing, or helped you build your project through these like building blocks
yeah,
over the years.
exactly. And actually, now that you say that too, this is like my favorite little tiny piece of like advice. It's so easy to do. People are like, well, I don't know who to reach out to or who to contact. So find a movie you like that's like your movie, and then just at the beginning of the movie, pause it and look at all the logos and all the names of the companies, because all those people were attached to that film you like, and look them up. Look them up on IMDb, because and that's a list from anything from financiers to production companies to distributors. And there you go. And find 10 movies that you like that are like your movie. And then just look at all the names, all the company names attached to it. And then just look them up.
Yeah,
You
you know
know,
what I do? My friends laugh at me, but in the UK, there are loads of underground posters promoting movies. It's like in a big sheet, and then I'm there like crunching down, trying to see who are the
yeah,
logos on the poster, taking
yeah,
photos. And they're like, "What are you doing?"
yeah.
I
You
just
got a
want to
magnifying
see
glass and taking pictures.
exactly
Yeah,
like, oh, interesting. So that's another finance here
yeah,
I don't have
yeah.
connections to. Yeah,
And by the way, I love this. This is so great. This is a great way to we'll end it here though, because we keep it's so easy to keep going. But that right there, here you are, someone who has worked for Amazon and worked for Netflix and have all this experience and have all these relationships and have these connections and have and have so much. And here you are, this person looking at the bottom of a poster to see is there another company I don't know? Is there another person I don't know? And that's the thing. You just keep doing that research. You keep just trying to find new people, new companies, and new. And in essence, you're looking for people you can reach out to, new people to build a more network and broaden your connections.
exactly. The people I work with in the industry, they all are very curious and hungry to learn more. And this week I went to a conference and I saw all these really amazing producers, right, that I respect and admire. They were all like with their little notebooks, right, writing down new ideas and picking their brains and like, oh, I haven't thought about it. That's a new fund. That's a new equity model. Let's explore that. So I really believe in that, sharing the knowledge and forever kind of educating yourself. And yes, that sometimes requires you punching down on a poster and like trying to find, because this industry is such a hidden, complicated kind of, hidden doors everywhere, and it's complicated and it shouldn't be. So I'm actually like really glad that you're doing this series. And I think it's all about understanding the business. So you're not just sending your scripts to info@netflix.com, but you actually, if you understand the rules, you can break the rules, you can
Yeah,
play the system, you can get somewhere eventually.
exactly, 100%. Doro, thank you so much for this deep dive conversation. It was awesome, and I hope so many people learn from it. And good luck on everything you're working on right now too.
Thank you, Tyler. Thank you so much.